And what I wanted to talk to you about today, not predominantly, but obviously I want to get to it. You sponsor the podcast, the audio version of this podcast that goes out. You know, we've got the Cryo Lab, Lincoln, which you run and own and promote and try and get to as many people as possible. And I wanted to ask a bit about cryo and how that journey's been so far. You know, and what do you see the future looking like for things like cryotherapy and, you know, general interaction with humans and trying to find therapies and look after our health? You know, we're I think we're all probably aware of our immune systems more than ever.
Yeah. No, it's been really positive, actually. And obviously the lockdown is a kick in the teeth every time it happens for everyone. But during lockdown 1, towards the end of it, and times and dates I'm lost with, but towards the end of the lockdown 1, we was allowed to reopen the cryotherapy. The gym was still shut. And if you remember, the cryotherapy was down the bottom of the gym in the corner near the mats. And I reopened it and it was getting some bookings and it was doing okay. And I was, because the gym was empty, I wasn't in martial art mode, training mode, you know, coaching mode, that side of the business mode. I was just, you know, running people through the cryo and I was having conversations and I just realised just the conversations were above my pay grade, a lot of them. So I was just listening. I didn't pretend to know what I was on about. You know, I had ladies visit me with MS and they was talking to me about their MS and why they were using it. And people visited me for all sorts of reasons. And I just stood and looked around the gym while I was talking to one lady. She was telling me about her ailments. And I just went, this isn't the appropriate place for the cryo. You know, you walk in to a gym. Often there was people training on the mats. I'd even run it when I'd have white collar on. There'd be 70 people on the mats training. The room would just be like a steam in there, a mist of fog and sweat and loud music. And then they'd be like, if you just walk down this corridor past this cage wall, and then I'm going to go in the cage at the bottom with you, and I'm going to put you in a machine and close the doors and press it. It's going to freeze you while all these people watch, you know.
Grunting and banging.
Yeah. So like, I was like, I mean, when I said it out loud, I was like, you moron, of course it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I was in that mode, cryo this, that, no, just do more stuff. And it just gave me time to think. So I went, right, okay. So started looking at other venues around Lincoln, thinking of getting a separate business premises for that and the float and a few other things. And then, because I couldn't figure out how to fit it into the academy sensibly without spending far too much money. And then Paula just said something one day. She went, why don't you just do the entrance to the martial art academy there where the roller shutter door? And as soon as she said it, I just went, perfect. That's exactly what we need to do.
Powerful Paula.
Yeah, it's just a simple little thing. But as soon as she said it, everything else fell into place. It was like, so that, yep, done. So we just had a massive refit towards the end of the first lockdown. Invested quite a lot of money. Went for it. So now you arrive at the cryotherapy place. I mean, you've seen it. So you wouldn't know the gym exists unless you know the gym exists. And you can come and you can go and float and cryo, and it's a separate sort of, I wouldn't say spa-like, but professional.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
professional premises.
Sets the tone. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and once we started advertising again and building a new clientele, it just took off. I was just sold out every week. It was fantastic, and I did my stats a week or two ago, and it's pretty much 89% returning customers. Everyone that visits pretty much returns, and the feedback's just incredible. And I've started to understand, myself personally, I've started to understand a lot more about it as well, because it's new technology. So a lot of stuff, a lot of feedback I'm getting is like, oh, okay, don't know why. Never heard of that. You know, rare diseases like myofascial pain syndrome. And someone came with that and just 3-4 sessions after 20 years of serious pain and morphine. She came in the second time. She looked like a completely different person. It was absolutely incredible transformation. It's just like she walked in and I was just like, oh, hello. She went, people say I'm not a bitch anymore. And she was just like laughing. And so I mentioned it to her on about a 3rd or 4th visit, whichever her last one was. And she was laughing. I was like, she's completely transformed her. People ask, where have you had your facial and where are you doing your treatments? And she's like, oh, no, I'm having they're like, what? And I'm the same. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I've never heard of the disease or ailment, whatever it is. But I'm starting to learn more, like, you know, especially with the anxiety and depression side of things, because that's an interesting area for me. Not what I was expecting when I got the cryo, but because it became such a large part of the feedback, I started looking into that. And it's kind of obvious, the serotonin, dopamine and endorphin release that you get, the neuroadrenaline release, it basically gives you a nice kickstart. Because some of the feedback's ridiculous, as in like, just like, well, it hasn't done that, it can't, that's bizarre. But and, you know, like one guy's a DJ, and shout out to Dale, and he lost his motivation for DJing. He'd been DJing 20 years and he didn't enjoy it anymore. He wasn't motivated, didn't, you know, get in there. And he came one session and he sends me, you know, links me to his videos every week. He does, and he's like, I can hear the music again. My hearing's back, and da da da. And it's like, well, it's actually not the hearing. I didn't say that to him. He'll hear this now, but it's, you know, it's been 6 months, 7 months since. So he's on his trajectory now. But it's just give him that kickstart, that little boost, that little like lift in life. Yeah. And he's awake again, if you like, for want of a terrible scientific term. But he's just, you know, he's on it, and it's just giving him that little kickstart he needed, and he's off. And he's, this is how it can be. But and he's back into his music and he's enjoying it, and he doesn't need to come back and do another session. It's terrible for business. It's fantastic for.
Well, I mean, I try and just educate people about it every week on the audio intros and outros, when obviously I give you guys a shout as sponsors of the podcast. And I always kind of am aware that I am not a scientist, and I as much as I read, it's a different thing having a direct experience of something and reading stuff. And at this level, when you start talking about cellular biology and all these things, it is a lot of information to understand. And you need to understand one thing to understand the next. But when I'm doing, you know, my chat about the cryo on the audio versions of this podcast, I'm always trying to push people to read about it, because if you do a bit of reading, you can find lots and lots of information online. I'm sure Aidan will pull something up now, but when you start to read it in front of your face and you realise, like you just said, anxiety, depression, skin ailments, just general uplift, awakening, sort of, it seems too good to be true. Yeah, yeah. And it seems ludicrous that you would just get cold.
I've got one, and it does.
Yeah. 3 minutes, and somehow you can set yourself on a trajectory, whether it's, like you say, waking up or actually becoming a regular user and having a whole host of just... Because in the end, whether you're fixing your bad back or your skin ailment or whatever, it seems to me that by doing it regularly, people can... create a whole new, it sounds ludicrous, but like a version of themselves. Literally, like a reawakening. Yeah. And the more you read about cold therapy and the actual science, it is fascinating.
No, it is. It's bizarre, because it's like you say, I at the beginning, I was like, well, this guy came in and he did this and da da da. And then in the end, you have to back off, because I was excited about it. You go, I just sound like a snake oil salesman. You know, I sound ridiculous, because it does. And I'm like, but the thing I've got on the wall when you walk in, cryotherapy, good for depression, anxiety, sports recovery, insomnia, and it lists all these things, and you look at it and go, really? What? 3 minutes? Hold on, no way. But when you, with a basic understanding, a lot of those things are linked to inflammation, a lot of those things are linked to, and you go, oh, so I mean, the number one thing that it does is just blitz inflammation, and a lot of things are linked to that, arthritis, and I had. Going off on a tangent, because I had my first experience, and again, there's no evidence for this. So I haven't had an injury since I've had the cryo, and I didn't realise until recently. And I've always have injuries. I train like I shouldn't at my age, probably. I get thrown around a lot by guys a lot younger than me, and I'm nearly always carrying a neck or a shoulder injury. Not to the point of needing hospital, although sometimes, and I don't go to hospital. I understand that they'll tell me to go home and not use it, so I just work it all out myself. But I have an ongoing back injury that I did from a deadlift 20 years ago, and I have to manage it. Excuse me, and it's fine. And I triggered it a month or so ago. I'd done some serious wrestling sessions, and I was digging holes in clay for like all week, 12 hours a day, and my back was under a lot of stress, and I just put my shoe on and it went, and it was the same injury, and I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen here. A month of rehab, can't train, can't do anything. And I went, Paula, just drive us in. Couldn't get dressed. Paula had to dress me and drove me to the academy.
Wow, that debilitating.
Oh, yeah, it's probably, it's excruciating pain. It's horrendous. And she drove me in. They helped me into the cryo unit, did one session, went home. I'd freed off I got my movement back because I was just literally couldn't. I was like, the pain was so bad, your body, I was locking up and like, I can't. Just like that. And one session, so I went home and I freed off a little bit and I was walking around and I could move and I was just, feeling it out. I went back in that evening, did one more session. Instantly, zero pain, none. I could tell, it hadn't mended it. I could tell exactly where it's sort of like from my whole body going into sort of like stress response from the pain I was in to like all that disappearing, all the muscles relaxing to the point of pain, the actual injury itself was like a little pinprick just there. I was like, oh, it's there. So I was up a ladder the next day, working, loading my roof up. I was doing a kettlebell class 2 days later. As long as I controlled my movement and didn't do anything stupid that aggravated that specific point, I was back training the next day. And I was like, I get that response from a lot of people over the last year of running it. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah. But I hadn't experienced that myself. So a lot of people coming in with back injuries from training and, and managing pain through serious back injuries like car accidents, seriously done. And I was like, oh, okay, but understanding it cerebrally, that word that I nearly tried to say then. Yeah. Understanding it with brain. Yeah. And then experiencing it. And I was like, this is what everyone's on about. And it was a fantastic feeling to actually experience that. Yeah. And then the penny dropped. I was like, I haven't had an injury in like over a year. And because I use it regularly, and I'd read these studies. It's like, you read the studies and it's, prevention of injuries in players of da-da-da. And I've got all the studies from Dr. Rondo and everyone. I was like, I'd read all them studies about it preventing injuries in training and this and that. And then I was like, but I haven't had an injury in over a year. Yeah. None. And that's the first one. And that was, I'm not surprised I had an injury. That was a crazy week for me.
How often do you use it then yourself?
Weekly.
You're weekly?
Weekly without fail, pretty much. Yeah. Unless I've sold all the slots by mistake and not saved myself.
I love that.
And then the last one that goes in, I do them.
And for you as well, as the kind of human being you are, you everything that you do, every service that you provide is for other people. Whether that's teaching kids as young as 5, putting them on the trajectory to a martial art mindset, a respect, a discipline, a freedom mindset. Obviously, everybody in between who's doing that training, the flotation and the cryo. So you get to see the reactions of people. You get to see the change. You get to help kind of cultivate that. That must be so rewarding. And like I say, this year of you listening to people in cryo saying, oh, this was happening and now this isn't, that must be like a really, a lovely lift.
It is, yeah, it's nice.